2 plus 2? 4. That just sounded in your head, didn't it? You didn't say it out loud. You didn't even decide you wanted to answer. And yet you clearly heard that word inside, in somebody's voice. That was your voice, or so you assume. But now ask yourself a question you've probably never asked before. If that voice is speaking, then who is listening? Because a moment ago, someone in your head was talking, and someone was receiving that same voice, and it can't be the same person at the same instant. Speaker and listener at once. You've been talking to yourself your whole life and never once asked who was talking to whom. And this isn't wordplay. Slide a person into a scanner and have them think in sentences without opening their mouth, and the exact same brain region lights up as when they speak aloud. Broca's area, the speech center. Your inner voice isn't a metaphor. It's real speech, only silenced. The brain genuinely speaks. It just holds the muscles back before they move your lips. There's an even simpler proof that this is real speech. Say a long sentence in your head, then say the same sentence out loud and time them both. They'll take almost exactly as long. Your inner voice has pacing, breathing, rhythm, as if it were really being spoken. It even has an accent. If you speak with an accent in daily life, your voice in your head sounds the same way. This isn't disembodied information. It's your voice, reproduced on the inside, with everything that makes it yours. Except for one thing, except the sound. You think this is the most ordinary thing in the world, that everyone is like this all the time, without pause, and this is exactly where the problem starts, because it isn't true. When scientists set out to check it honestly, they found something that dismantles everything you assumed about yourself. For decades, people were asked directly, how often do you talk to yourself in your head? Almost everyone answered the same way, that it's constant, an unbroken stream. The problem is that a question asked after the fact is worthless, because the moment you stop to think about it, you instantly switch that voice on. You check whether it's there, and the checking itself turns it on. It's like trying to check whether the fridge light goes off when the door shuts by opening the door. In the 1980s, a psychologist named Russell Hurlburt came up with a way around that trap. He gave subjects a small beeper that went off at random moments of the day. There was one rule. In the second you hear the signal, freeze whatever was happening in your head. Not what you think about your thinking. Exactly what was there a fraction of a second earlier, before you even noticed. And then, in an interview with a researcher, describe it as precisely as you can. Not from memory an hour old, from that one frozen moment. The method is grueling, it takes training and days of practice, but it does something no questionnaire can. It catches the thought red-handed before you can tell yourself a convenient story about it. The results clashed with what everyone believed. It turned out the inner voice shows up on average in about 1 out of every 4 frozen moments. Not constantly, roughly a quarter of the time. And between people, the differences were vast. There were those in whom the voice sounded at nearly every signal 9 times out of 10, and those in whom it never appeared once, 0 out of dozens of signals. A whole life without a single sentence in the head. The same method, the same researchers, and a spread from 0 to almost 100%. It's not that some think more and others less. It's that they think with something entirely different. And it isn't always a monologue. Researchers found that a large part of inner speech takes the form of dialogue. You ask yourself a question and answer it. You argue with yourself. You take someone else's side and object to your own. Inside one head, a conversation runs between 2 sides that are both you and yet sound like 2 different people. One harsh, one defending, one yours, the other suspiciously like someone you used to know. This isn't a minor detail. Among the people you pass on the street are those who have never in their lives heard a sentence in their head. They don't think in words, they think in images and feelings and pure understanding that needs no words. To them, your endless inner commentary would sound like torture, and to you, their silence is unimaginable. 2 people can sit side by side doing exactly the same thing and hold 2 completely different worlds inside their heads. They'll never find out, because nobody asks. This voice doesn't speak at random. It comes back loudest when you plan, when you hold yourself back, when you try to keep control, when you repeat a phone number so you won't lose it, when you tell yourself to stay calm before answering someone in anger, when you walk yourself through a hard task step by step. Silence that voice and you lose more than a commentary. You lose part of the ability to steer yourself. People whose inner speech was blocked in experiments did worse on tasks that demanded self-control and planning. The voice in your head isn't a passive companion, it's a pilot. But even if you're one of those who hear the voice, the strangest part is still ahead. Who is the one speaking? And how does your brain know it's you and not a stranger? Because it isn't obvious at all. When you produce a sentence in your head yourself, your brain does something clever. Before it sends the command to form the words, it simultaneously sends a copy of that command to the areas that hear. a heads up. The auditory regions learn that a voice is about to arrive and that it comes from within, not from the world, so they don't flag it as foreign. Neuroscientists call this signal the corollary discharge. It's what keeps you from being startled by your own thoughts. The brain warns itself in advance that what it's about to hear is its own production. The same mechanism works outside the head. It's why you can't tickle yourself. When your hand moves toward your ribs, the brain sends a copy of that command and dampens the response in advance. It knows the culprit, so it mutes the sensation. Someone else's hand sends no such copy, so it tickles for real. Your inner voice runs on the same principle. You recognize it as yours because the brain forewarned itself that it's the one making it. And now the darkest part. The same mechanism that makes you recognize your own voice as yours can break down. When the warning doesn't arrive, the brain still produces the sentence, but no longer knows it made it. It hears it as foreign, as someone else's voice that appeared from outside. This is one of the hypotheses for where the voices in schizophrenia come from. Not out of nothing. They are the patient's own thoughts, with the tag reading, "It's me torn off." Your inner monologue and the voice a sick person hears may be exactly the same phenomenon. Only one thing separates them: that quiet signal, which works in you and failed in him. There's even evidence that backs this up. When a person speaks in their head, sensitive sensors pick up tiny, imperceptible tensions in the muscles of their larynx. The speech muscles work, even though no sound comes out. In some people who hear voices, exactly the same thing was recorded. Their larynx moved in time with the voice they took to be foreign. The body gave away that they themselves were speaking. The line between thinking and hearing voices is thinner than you'd want to know. One last question remains, and it's the most unsettling of them all. Where did this voice come from in the first place? Because you weren't born with it. An infant doesn't think in sentences. It has to learn words first. From whom? From parents, from the people around you, from everyone who spoke to you before you could answer. The Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky noticed something no one had paid attention to before. Small children talk to themselves out loud. They play and narrate their own movements, scold themselves, encourage themselves, carry on a full conversation with themselves, audible to the whole room. Then, around the age of 7, that speech goes quiet. It doesn't disappear. It hides inside. What was once said out loud now happens silently, in the head. Vygotsky noticed one more thing. When he gave a child a harder task, the self-talk immediately came back out loud. The bigger the problem, the louder the child guided itself. That voice wasn't decoration. It was a tool for thinking. And that tool doesn't grow inside on its own. First, someone has to speak to you with it from the outside, so that one day you can repeat it to yourself within. Your inner monologue is not your private invention. It's a conversation you once held out loud, folded up, and tucked inside. And that means one thing. The voice you think in isn't entirely yours. You learned it from others. The tone you use with yourself when you make a mistake, that particular harshness or gentleness, the way you arrange sentences in your head, all of it came from outside before it became you. If someone spoke to you harshly in childhood, there's a chance that today you speak to yourself in that same harsh voice. You carry the echo of other people's words in your head and mistake it for your own inner voice. Someone long gone from your life still speaks up in your head every time you make a mistake. Their sentences survived in your voice long after they themselves disappeared. So the next time you hear yourself inside your head, planning, judging yourself, carrying on that endless quiet conversation, ask yourself this one question. Whose voice does it actually sound like? Who taught it to you? And when you talk to yourself, who is the one speaking and who is the one listening? Because your whole life you assumed there was only one person in your head. And it turns out there are at least two, and neither of them is entirely you.